Hi everyone, welcome to the third lecture on the course on friendship. Here I'm going to be discussing the three different types of friendships in more detail and how they relate to each other. First of all, so let me review a little bit. So you have the friendship based on use and utility, expediency. Two people who need each other for certain reasons, and they become friends based on that situation, on those circumstances. Second, you have friendship based on pleasure. Two people who derive pleasure from being together. It could be erotic, sexual pleasure. Or it could be, they're both good conversationalists. They're both funny. They're upbeat and positive characters who sort of thrive on each other's optimism. So whatever the case may be, there is something about being around these people that makes you feel good, and you, based on those pleasures that you receive, you form a kind of friendship based on that. And then third, and of course the essential notion of friendship is the one where two people love each other based on who they are and on the goodness of the persons themselves. So the first thing that you need to understand is Aristotle does not think that any of these forms of friendships are bad. So I know that in contemporary times, oh, so-and-so is using you for something, and that's seen as denigrating and bad. But that's not the way Aristotle thinks about it. So Aristotle thinks like, look, most of the people that we know in work are friends of utility, friends that because we work in a certain place and because, their functions in that sort of situation, we're dependent on their work and they're dependent on our work, and we have to work as a team, and we form a friendship around this kind of team and the utility that we provide for each other. There's nothing wrong with this. This is very normal and very healthy and very good, right? Friendship. And the same thing for pleasure. We all, enjoy being around people that are funny and we have a good time with. There's nothing wrong with these kinds of pleasure, these kinds of friendships, right? So what Aristotle thinks, look, it's not that they're bad, it's that they're not complete. That's the idea. That's the way you got to think about this. So they're just like partial. They're the cup is, half full. It's not complete. Where good friendships, okay, are complete. It's a complete package. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but it entails utility and pleasure, right? So, but it's more than that, right? Because the friendship is the love, not just of the pleasure and the utility that you derive, but of the person themselves, right? So the he says these other friendships, utility and pleasure, are coincidental. They're coincidental because they're based or dependent on the situation. I happen to work in a certain place, and therefore I'm friends with certain people because I happen to work there. Certain people, I go to the bar and they're there and they're funny and I become friends with them and we go out for drinks every once in a while, and we enjoy each other's company and so on. And so our friendship is dependent on that. Of course, Aristotle says, when you leave your job, you probably won't stay in touch with these people. Your friendship will dissolve because it's coincidental and it's only based on that utility. If someone, for some reason is not funny anymore to you, your friendship will probably dissolve as well because you don't receive the pleasure that you used to receive. So these are not enduring friendships, okay? Now, the friendship of the good person is enduring, but there is a problem here, you see, because good friendship requires that the person be good. You can't have a good friendship between a person who's not good and a person who's good. That's not possible for Aristotle. So you have to have, only good friendships can only exist between good people. And this is a problem, and we'll address this in the next lecture. So, but the essence of a good friendship entails the goodness of the other person. It's not coincidental, right? I am friends because I love not the pleasure or the utility, but the person themselves. That's the key. So let me just read. Aristotle says, but he says, but complete friendship. And notice the word here, complete, right? So the other ones are partial; they participate in some aspect. But complete and full friendship is the friendship of good people, similar in virtue. For they wish goods in the same way to each other insofar as they are good. And they are good in their own right, right? So if you are a good person, you will wish good things on the other person. But if the other person is a good person, they will reciprocate that good wish for you, what is good for you, okay? So you see the usefulness already, right? I mean, it's very useful to have good friends because it's always really useful to have people wish good things for you. He goes on, those who wish goods to each other, to those who wish goods to their friends for their friends' own sake are friends most of all. For they have the attitude because of the friend himself, not because of the pleasure or the utility that they provide. So, not coincidentally. These people's friendship lasts as long as they are good and virtue is enduring. So these are friends even when they move away, even if they leave their jobs, they are friends and their friendship will endure. Okay, so now there are certain other features that I want to mention about friendship, essential friendship here, about good friendship. So good friendship, one, it requires participation in activities, common shared activities. You cannot be good friends with someone that you do not spend time with, according to Aristotle. Okay? Participation entails time. How much time? A lot of time. Aristotle calls it a living together. And maybe not literally living together, but, you really spend time with this person or have spent a lot of time because it requires knowledge of the other person's moral character and virtue and intellectual virtue. You need to know that the other person is good, right? Because it's based on that goodness that you love the person. Now, it's because of this, you see, it's because of this. It's the idea that it's anchored in the moral virtueness and goodness of the person that arises the idea of trust, right? Because what you trust ultimately is that based on your knowledge of the person's intellectual virtues and moral character, you know or you have good evidence to believe that that person would never do an injustice to you. If you're not morally virtuous, you could see how this kind of all comes together here. So if you're not morally virtuous, that means you're not temperate. That means you give in to your passions. It's hard to have a relationship with people like that, right? How can you trust someone who's intemperate? Or someone who's a coward, for instance, who at the minute he faces any danger, he will betray you, right? It's very difficult to have a friendship if you know their character, right? To be of that caliber, then it's very difficult to have trust because you don't have faith that the person will come through when it's necessary for them to come through. So you can see why Aristotle thinks, look, a good friendship in which there arises this kind of trust and the love for the good, you see, is a friendship in which both people have to be good. Now, there is a problem with this, and we'll discuss this later. But so this kind of friendship, you see, is not just, someone you meet, I met them last week, we have a lot in common, he's super cool. No, that's not what, he's talking about someone that you've known for many years, that you really understand their character, and their character is good, right? They are a good person. They have a good character. They're honest, right? Um, they're courageous. They're temperate, right? They don't get very angry. They have this very good moral character and good intellectual virtues. Okay, so you have participation, time. Now, trust. It endures, right? Because when somebody has morally good and they've actually established a state of virtue, that takes time. This is not something that just goes away from one day to another. It's who you are, right? For Aristotle. So, and this is why you love that person for who they are and the good that they do and the good that they represent, right? Because good people love good things, right? So the last thing is rare. So Aristotle thinks this doesn't happen every day. Good friendships of utility are many. Friendships of pleasure are many. But good friends, maybe 3 in a lifetime, 4, right? So, it's, I mean, we can, we can massage this a little bit, and talk about different, maybe, friendships that are good, and friendships that are really, really good or something like that. But in any case, it requires some investment on your part of energy, and you just don't have that much time and energy to invest in having, 700 friends. I mean, you may have 700 friends in Facebook, but that doesn't mean they're good friends, because good friends are very few, right? Because you have to spend time with them, participate, you have to know them very well, and so on. So I hope this gives you some idea. We're going to be talking. We're going to be talking more about more features and still adding more layers to this idea of a good friendship. But this, I think, is starting to fill in some sort of picture for you of what Aristotle is talking about when he's talking about good friends. So in the next video, in the next section, I'm going to be discussing the problem that many people object to, and that is, that it seems like kind of restrictive to think that only really morally excellent people can be friends, right? Seems problematic. So we'll talk about that next time. Thanks.